So we really just need a way to tell if we've clicked or not. So that's going to fall into a selection structure, and I'm going to put it on another little subchart to keep everything nicely organized. So I'll create another subchart called check click. That'll work. Yeah, go ahead and create that one. And we're going to run a selection structure to see if we can do it. And I believe I pointed at this before. Raptor has kind of a nice help menu. So if you're not sure what it is, you can come in here and kind of look through the help menu and see what the function is going to look like. Because we want a mouse click. So that's going to be down here under mouse operations on the index. Get mouse X, get mouse Y, the values, the button down, wait for mouse button. This is what, we don't want to check until the user's clicked. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to call this function wait for mouse button. And after that point, we're going to see if it was pressed. Or we can use this function, get mouse button, that puts the location of a mouse in 2 parameters. And right here. If the mouse button has not been clicked, it will wait. So this is probably the one we want. We want to call this function get mouse button, say which button we're going to press, which is either going to be the left button, right button. They're kind of spelled out for us. But we'll just do a simple left button click. And it will sit there and wait until the user clicks before it does anything. So remember that help function is there. So before we check anything, we don't want to just check immediately. We want to just listen for that. So we're going to call this function get mouse button. And then we can see down here in the predictive text or over there in the help menu which button. So we have left button. You can see it here in the predictive text. When the left button's clicked, put that someplace called mouse X and mouse Y. So it's going to register the click of the left button and create these variables mouse X and mouse Y for us. And then we can do a condition, check the condition like we were talking on the board. So if mouse X is bigger than bigger than button X1, and we can either type the word or use the symbols. I like to use the symbols. So if it's bigger than mouse X is bigger than button 1 and mouse X is smaller than our column of buttons X2. So those 2 conditions means that we're inside the left and right side. We're to the right of the left side of the button and we're to the left of the right side of the button. So we have to be in that column where our buttons occur. Then we can check the other things. So if those are true and the mouse Y position is, well, when we did our Y's, it goes up. So the lower numbers on the bottom and the larger numbers on the top. So if the mouse Y is less than our show Y1, that was the top side of it, and mouse Y is bigger than show Y2, then that means we've narrowed it down both vertically and horizontally if all 4 of those conditions are met. So we just basically have to check against all 4 sides of the rectangle to see if we're there. And I was talking while I typed that, so let's check that to make sure I didn't get a typo in there. That often happens, so then I'll put show button. Because here we haven't actually put this in our program yet. We're just creating the interface to make sure it all works right. So I'm going to run this and click the show button, and it should write that to the console. So if I come over here and click on show address, oh, yep, it clicked in the show button. All right, so now we're getting somewhere. I wanted to check that immediately because, well, I was talking and typing at the same time, and typos happen when we're just typing. So talking and typing, I like double my chances of a typo. If it's not a show button, we want to check again. And then basically we can do this, copy this condition. We'll copy that and paste that in here. And our buttons are all in a column, so the X ones are still the same, but we want to check against the create button. Create Y1 and create Y2. And if that condition is met, then we click the create button. Whoops. Create button. And once again, we can just copy that and check the other one. So Control C for that whole selection structure with the output and everything. And I'll paste that here. And then check that for the exit button. And this is kind of the point of moving this over to another thing. That way we didn't have to run that whole program every time to check this thing that's going to be just a small piece of it. And, well, I guess if it's not on one of those buttons, then we click somewhere else. So I'll output that as well. Whoops. I keep forgetting my quote marks today. Somewhere else. So let's check and make sure all those clicks work right, and then we'll be ready to move this over and integrate this interface into that program that we already know works. So run that. We have our 3 buttons. So I will come over here and click in the big white space. Oh, so it knew that was somewhere else. So let's check our other buttons. We can check our exit button. Oh, it said create button. So let's come over here and check that. I think I just forgot to change the output. Yep, I just forgot to change the output. So come back in here and change this word create to exit. And now test that again. Remember, always fix one thing at a time. Even if you notice a couple problems, fix one of them, come back, run it again, and then fix the other one. Okay, so that hit the exit button. Just one more to check. Can we click the create button? Yep. So that looks like it's creating the right buttons. So now we're ready to copy and paste this over into our other program. So the first thing though, well, I guess first thing, I'm going to get rid of these backups that Raptor filled this folder up with and get back to just our programs. This program, our original version of the network program, we know that works. And we don't want to mess that up. In case something goes wrong along the way, we want to be able to get back to a spot that works. So first thing is I'm going to make a copy of that, and then I'll work in the copy. That way if something goes wrong, I can get right back to it. So now I'm going to open that. Open. And now I have 2 windows here. So I'm going to copy the interface stuff over to this other one. So to modify it, I want to look at both of them. So I'm going to hit the Windows key and the left button to put that on the left. And then the other Raptor window is right here. So Windows key and either the left or right button will fill that up to take it so it only takes up half the screen. And that way we can see both of them. This might be, make that a little bit smaller. Hopefully that can be read in the video and kind of be seen. So we need to copy a bunch of this stuff over here. So, well, it looks like what's in the main here is really a draw function. So let's create a subchart that says to draw the interface. So add subchart, we'll call that draw interface. And remember, no spaces in names like this. It's like variable naming. And then that is going to grab everything from our main here. So I'll select all of it, Control C to copy it, bring that over here and paste that into draw interface. But you can see it didn't copy those, didn't want to copy those yet. But we don't really need those things yet. We'll copy them over one at a time. So I'm going to get rid of those call statements. So that'll draw the window and set up the X variables for that column of buttons. So that'll kind of get us started. And then over in the main, that's probably the first thing we want to do is call that draw interface. Draw interface. So we'll put the interface up there so that the user can click on a button. And then we need to create our buttons. So I'm going to take the show button one and copy that over. So add a subchart, call it show button, and copy all of these things over there. Control C. Whoops, not that. Right there, Control V to paste that. And then a create button. Add subchart, create button. And we already have all this stuff ready. We're just copying and pasting it. Copy, paste. And one more for the exit button. Because we knew both parts work separately, so now we just have to put them together. So now that's going to draw our buttons. So here on draw interface, we're going to bring back those call statements. So when we draw the interface, we're also going to call the show button on it. And then we will call that subchart for the create button. And then call the subchart for the exit button. So that draws everything, gets that moved over there. But this one, we're not just going to copy this directly over. Well, we'll still be able to copy, but this, checking to see if that button is clicked, that's what's taking the place of our menu-driven programming. So now we want to replace this prompt to the user showing the menu with this wait for a mouse click button. And then instead of checking if the user entered 1, 2, or 3, we're just going to see which button they clicked on. So let's copy and paste those parts over, which take a little bit more modification than the other copy and paste stuff. So now we can start bringing our checks over. So here, what was originally the prompt for a menu-driven program, we're going to replace that with this pre-built procedure, which is going to wait for a mouse click. So instead of asking the user, throwing these up and asking the user to enter a number, we're just going to have the program sit there and wait until the user clicks. So we're going to listen for an event to happen and switching over from menu-driven to event-driven programming. And then our conditions. So I guess start here with the exit condition. With the menu, when the user entered 3, then we were finished. With our buttons, it'll be this condition right here. When this condition is met, then we'll exit. So I'm just going to come over here and copy that. Come into this little selection structure, the condition, and paste that in there. So now we'll wait for a mouse click. If that mouse click is on the exit button, then we're done. We'll end the program. Otherwise, we could click on one of our other buttons. So maybe the create button. So come in here, copy that, bring that over here, and here's the one for the create button. So I'll just replace that selection that we made from the menu-driven programming with the selection for the event-driven programming. So you can see the logic kind of works the same. All we're doing is changing the condition and changed the wait spot, because before we threw up a prompt and waited for the user to type something. Well, now we're just going to sit there and wait until the user clicks their button. So, the logic's not really changing. Just the overall logic isn't changing. It's just being modified. And then we can do the same thing with our show button. We'll copy that condition that determines if we clicked on the show button and paste that right in here where we make the choice of whether we want to go call that show subchart or not and display this data. So that should be everything copied over. Hopefully that's going to work now. So I'm going to run it and do a couple quick tests. So if I run that, oh, it popped up. I guess the easiest thing to check is if I click over here. Oh, it went around. We can see the mouse variable showed up in the watch window, but nothing happened. What about the exit button? Hit exit. Oh, we're finished. So I'm not sure why the console printed out like that time. Move that over to the side here. So it looks like that part worked. The window probably should have closed at some point. So let's go in there and write the instruction to close the window. So after we're all the way finished, if we're ready to end, we do have a call statement that we need to make, just like somewhere over here. Just like we said, open graph window. When we're all the way finished, we want to close graph window. Make sure we call that the very last thing. So now let's see if that exit button worked correctly. So we'll run it, and clicking over here does nothing. We'll point at the flowchart here in a second to go over that. And we hit the exit button. Oh, that closes and it's finished. And then clicking in that blank spot, well, that kind of took this route. So we weren't in the exit condition. We weren't in the show condition. We weren't on the create condition. So that's all the way over here on this branch where nothing happens. So if the user clicks somewhere other than our buttons, just nothing happens. And we go back around the loop and wait for another click. So now let's check these last two. The show feature and the create feature. And when we go to test this, I said earlier, I think the original plan was to display the text here, but these videos seem like they're running kind of long, and we have seen how to do that. So I'm just going to leave it going to the console leave the output going to the console, but you might want to try that as an exercise. Just set up some variables to position like the first line and display the text on the interface here, and then increment that variable by 20 pixels or something, and then display the next line of text, and then keep doing that to write it to the GUI. But we've seen how to do that, and this example is starting to feel like it's running really long, so I'm just going to leave it going to the console, and it might be good practice to go ahead and try that. And might as well mention it here, using variables like that, that's how you would move pictures around. Like if you wanted to do an animation, you put the picture on there and make sure you have variables tracking where the picture is, and then each pass through the loop, just change that variable so that the picture moves around the window as it progresses through the loop. But for us now, let's just check these last two buttons, and the example's running kind of long, so I'm just going to leave it to the console output. So if we create addresses, oh, there's our box. How many machines are there? So let's say there's 6 machines. Well, the watch window changed, but all that happened in the background. It wrote a file and everything, so hopefully all that still worked. And if we hit show addresses, it should show us those 6 addresses. Yep, there's our 6 addresses. And now back over here in the window, we can create addresses and we can show them. You can see it's doing the same thing as the menu-driven program. It's just when we're clicking on buttons. If we click over here, nothing happens. But when we click on the exit button, then we're done. So quite a bit there. But the main thing I wanted to emphasize, the point of that, is we've already seen all that. You've seen the pieces. That is a very rudimentary interface. True, right? Not a whole lot going on there. We could spend a while with the graphics and make it look a whole lot better. Bring in pictures of buttons instead of just a rectangle there. And we could make it look a lot better. But you've seen how it works. You've seen all the pieces now. I just wanted to go through an example to really emphasize that this class is, we're only 6 weeks into the class now, and you have seen all the parts. You've seen all of it and how it goes together. So well along the way, and programming is just taking these pieces we've seen and putting them together in different orders, whatever order is necessary to solve the program at hand. Sorry, not the program at hand, to solve the problem at hand. We've seen all the parts, so it's just figuring out which order those parts need to go together in. And then a few other details, but that's what this was about. We've seen all the parts, right? It's a very rudimentary GUI, graphical user interface, but we can see it's there. We can click on a button and do stuff, and it's just going to sit there and wait until we click on the button. So we've seen all the parts to make a piece of software like you're probably familiar with. The difference is what order do we put those pieces together in, and how much time do we spend on the finer details making it look nice. So let's go wrap everything up, because it seems like these examples have lasted for a while, gone on for a while. But it shouldn't be any trouble to take that console output and move that over to the GUI. Just set up some variables to and increment them through each pass of the loop so that each display text command goes to a different spot on the GUI. Let's go wrap everything up.
Okay, so, well, that seemed like a lot, right? Let's take a second and ask ourselves, did that seem like a lot of information this week? Because I talked for a long time, but that shouldn't really be considered a whole lot. Pointing up what's on the board here, this is new, kinda. We'd already seen how to draw boxes. We'd already seen how to do selection structures. So all we did was put those two things together. That's not really new. This is just a layout, a rough idea thing. I'll talk about that with this. The UML diagrams, we use that for making a plan this week. And, well, in all honesty, you're all probably ignoring the parts about making a plan. Because right now, at the stage you're at in your learning process, most of the programs we make are going to be simple and kind of small. Where I actually put that level changes. People have asked me before, and most recently when somebody asked me what counts as a small program, I'll say 8,000 lines. If you're less than 8,000 lines of code, it's small. So right now everything you're writing is going to be a small program. And small programs you can probably do off the top of your head, right? You're going to ignore all this stuff I said about planning and just sit down and start putting the thing together. That's fine on small and simple things. A lot of times that's fine. But when you get to further down the road, when you get to bigger, more complicated things, please keep it in mind for them. That's why we're going over it now. And well, I say practice it now, because a plan for the small, simple things is easy. So it's easy to learn to make a plan now, but I'm aware you're probably going to ignore all that part, and when you go to write a program, you're just going to sit down and start writing it, do random stuff until it works out, which that'll get you through the small programs. But when they get bigger and more complicated, that's a little bit harder to do without some sort of plan in place. But we talked about plans. We'd mentioned UML. We'd seen the pictures for them. I guess those particular ones, they're new in the lecture videos, but we're going to talk about that in a Zoom meeting before this lecture is planned to be played. So even that's not new, not really new information. All the stuff that it's doing is only sequential, a sequence for it. We have some selection structures, some reiteration structures, and some invocations, and we've seen all that. Talk about that a lot. Really, the only new thing today, the only new thing this week was random numbers. Right? I just talked for a long time, but there should have only been one new thing on that list. We asked about how much new material showed up this week. Because now that we've seen all the parts, that was the main point of this. We've seen all our parts. So this was the first example of actually building something larger with all those parts combined into one. So it seemed like a lot, but really there should have only been one new thing here, and that's random numbers. Everything else was stuff we've seen before. It's just when we saw it before, we were looking at only that one piece. We were looking at a simple program that had only a selection structure, or a simple program that only ran through a sequence, or a simple program that only looked at a loop. And now we've seen all those parts put together into an example. And so you want to make sure that makes sense, that everything we covered here wasn't new. It was stuff we knew, just rearranged. We rearranged the stuff we already knew, is what this example was about.